Henrik Ibsen was named Henrik Johan Ibsen. He was a Norwegian playwright and theater director born on 20th of March in 1828 and died on May 23, 1906. He is one of the founders of modernism in theater, which often referred to as the father of realism and one of the most influential playwrights of his time. His major works include Brand, Peer Gynt, An Enemy of the People, Emperor and Galilean, A Doll's House, Hedda Gabler, Ghost, The Wild Duck, When the Dead Awakened, and The Master Builder. Ibsen is the most frequently performed dramatist in the world after Shakespeare, and A Doll's House is the world's most performed play in 2006. Ibsen is often ranked as one of the most distinguished playwrights in the European tradition and is widely regarded as the foremost playwright of the 19th century.
George Bernard Shaw, Oscar Wilde, Arthur Miller, James Joyce, Eugene O'Neill, and Miroslav Krleya were among the playwrights and novelists who were inspired by him. In 1902, 1903, and in 1904, Ibsen was nominated for the Nobel Prize in Literature. Ibsens were published by the Danish publisher Gyldendal and were written in Danish, the popular written language of Denmark and Norway during his lifetime. Despite the fact that the majority of his plays are set in Norway, often locations that are reminiscent of Skien, the port town where he grew up, Ibsen lived in Italy and Germany for 27 years, and he rarely visited or returned to Norway during his most active years. Ibsen's drama were influenced by his own experience as a member of Skien's merchant elite, and he often modeled or named character after family members. He was the father of Prime Minister Sigurd Ibsen. Ibsen's drama had a strong influence upon contemporary culture.
About Dollhouse. A Dollhouse is a three-act play written by Norwegian playwright Henrik Ibsen. It was premiered at the Royal Theatre in the Copenhagen, Denmark on 21 December 1879 and been published earlier that month. The play is set in a Norwegian town circa 1879. The play is significant for the way it deals with the fate of a married woman who at the time Norway lacked reasonable opportunities for self-fulfillment in the male-dominant world. Despite the fact that Ibsen denies it was his intent to write a feminist play. In 2006, the centennial of Ibsen's death, A Dollhouse held in the distinction of being the world's most performed play that year. UNESCO has inscribed Ibsen's autographed manuscripts of A Doll's House on the Memory of the World Register in 2001, to recognition of their historical value.
Now for the characters of the play. First is Nora Helmer, wife of Thorvald, mother of three. She is an ideal wife in 19th century. Second is Thorvald Helmer, Nora's husband, a newly promoted bank manager, professes to be enamored of his wife, but their marriage stifles her. Dr. Rank, a rich family friend, he is terminally ill, and it is implied that his tuberculosis of the spine originates from a venereal disease contracted by his father. Christine Lind, Nora's old school friend, widowed and is seeking for employment. Niels Krogstad, an employee at Thorvald's bank, single father, he is revealed to be a long-lost lover of Christine. Ivar, Bobby, and Emmy, Nora's and Thorvald's children. Anne-Marie, Nora's former nanny. Helen, the Helmer's maid, and the porter. In the play, it delivers a Christmas tree to the Helmer's household at the beginning of the play.
The first act, actually it is Christmas Eve, Nora Helmer enters her well-furnished living room, the setting of the entire play, carrying several packages. Thorvald Helmer, Nora's husband, comes out of his study when he hears her arrive. He greets her playfully and affectionately, but then chides her for spending so much money on Christmas gift. Their conversation reveals that Helmers have had to be careful with money for many years. but that Torvald has recently obtained a new position at the bank where he worked that afforded them a more comfortable lifestyle. Helen, their maid, announces that Helmer's dear friend, Dr. Rank, has come to visit. At the same time, another visitor has arrived. This one is still unknown. To Nora's great surprise, it is Christine Lind. Her former school friend comes into the room. The two have not seen each other for years, but Nora mentions having read that Mrs. Lind's husband has passed away a few years earlier. Mrs. Lind tells Nora that when her husband died, she was left with no money and no children. Nora tells Mrs. Lind about her first year of marriage to Torvald. She explained that they were very poor and both had to work long hours. Torvald became sick, she adds, and the couple had to travel to Italy so that Torvald could recover.
Lind explained that she had to take care of her sick mother and two younger brothers for years when Nora asked questions about her life. However, she claims that her mother had passed away and that her brothers are no longer in need of her. Mrs. Lind says she feels empty because she is unemployed, and she hopes Torvald will be able to help her in finding work. Nora agrees to talk with Torvald and then tells Mrs. Lind a big secret. Nora secretly borrowed money for her and Torvald's trip to Italy without Torvald's knowledge, and she told Torvald that the money came from her father. Nora also revealed that she has been working and saving in secret for years, slowly repaying the loan, which is soon to be completely repaid. Krogstad, a low-level employee at the bank where Torvald works, walks into Torvald's office. Nora responds uncomfortably to Krogstad's presence. Dr. Rank, coming out of the office, says Krogstad is morally ill. Torvald enters in the living room after finishing his meeting with Krogstad and says he will probably recruit Mrs. Lind at the bank. Then Dr. Rank, Torvald, and Mrs. Lind leave, leaving Nora alone. Nora's children return with their nanny, Anne-Marie, and Nora entertains them before Krogstad enters the room. Krogstad is revealed to be the source of Nora's hidden loan during their conversation.
Krogstad states that Torvald wants to fire him from his position at the bank and mention to his own reputation. He asks Nora to use her influence to ensure that his position remains secure. When she refuses, Krogstad points out that he has in his possession a contract that contains Nora's forgery of her father's signature. Krogstad blackmails Nora, threatening to reveal her crime and to bring shame and disgrace on both Nora and Torvald if she does not prevent Torvald from firing him. After that, Krogstad leaves, and when Torvald returns, Nora tries to convince him not to fire Krogstad, but Torvald will hear nothing of it. He declares that Krogstad an immoral man and states that he feels physically ill in the presence of such people.
Act 2 opens on the following day, Christmas Day. Alone, Nora paces her living room, filled with anxiety. Mrs. Lind arrives and helps sew Nora's costume for the ball that Nora will be attending at her neighbor's home the following evening. Nora tells Mrs. Lind that Dr. Rank has a mortal illness that he inherited from his father. Nora's suspicious behavior leads Mrs. Lind to guess that Dr. Rank is the source of Nora's loan. Nora denies Mrs. Lind's charge but refuses to reveal the source of her distress. Torvald arrives, and Nora again begs him to keep Krogstad employed at the bank. But again, Torvald refuses. When Nora presses him, he admits that Krogstad's moral behavior isn't all that bothers him. He dislikes Krogstad's overly familiar attitude. Torvald and Nora argue until Torvald sends the maid to deliver Krogstad's letter of dismissal. Torvald leaves. Dr. Rank arrives and tells Nora that he knows he is close to death. She attempts to cheer him up and begins to flirt with him. She seems to be preparing to ask him to intervene on her behalf in her struggle with Torvald. Suddenly, Dr. Rank reveals to Nora that he is in love with her. In light of this revelation, Nora refuses to ask Dr. Rank for anything.
Krogstad arrives after Dr. Rank has left and demands a reason for his dismissal. He now demands that he not only be rehired at the bank, but he will be rehired in a higher position. He needs respectability and has changed the terms of blackmailing. He puts a letter in the Helmer's letterbox outlining Nora's debt and forgery. Nora tells Mrs. Lind everything in a panic, and Mrs. Lind tells Nora to keep Torvald from opening the letter as long as she can while she speaks with Skorvad. Nora tells and start practicing the tarantella she will perform at that evening's costume party to divert Torvald's attention away from the letterbox. She dances wildly and aggressively in her agitated emotional state, which irritates Torvald. Nora is successful in convincing Torvald and waits until after she performs the parties before opening his mail. Mrs. Lind returns shortly after informs Krogstad and she has left him a message, but he will be gone until the following evening. Krogstad meets Mrs. Lind in the Helmer's living room the next night, while the costume party is going on upstairs. It reveals in their conversation that the two had once deeply in love. Mrs. Lind said she left Krogstad for a wealthier man who would help her to support her family. She tells Krogstad that now she is no longer bound by her own family responsibilities. She wants to be with him and look after his children. Krogstad is overjoyed, and he promises to return his letter before Torvald can read it, and discovers Nora's secret. Mrs. Lind, on the other hand, demands that he leave the letter because she feels that once the truth is exposed, both Torvald and Nora will be better off.
Soon after Krogstad's departure, Nora and Torvald enter back from the costume ball. Torvald tells Nora how desirable she looks as she dances. Dr. Rank has come to say goodnight, who was also at the party, and promptly interrupts Torvald's advances on Nora. After Dr. Rank leaves, Torvald finds in his letterbox two of Dr. Rank's visiting cards, each with a black cross above the name. Nora knows that Dr. Rank's cards constitute his announcements that he will soon die, and she informs Torvald of this fact. Torvald reads the letter and is outraged. He calls Nora a hypocrite and a liar and complains that she has ruined his happiness. He declares that she will not be allowed to raise their children. Helen then brings a letter. Torvald opens it and discovers that Krogstad has returned Nora's contract, which contains the forged signature. Overjoyed, Torvald attempts to dismiss his past insults, but his harsh words have triggered something in Nora. She declares that despite their 8 years of marriage, they do not understand one another. This shows that Torvald treated Nora like a doll, to be played with and admired. Nora decides to leave Torvald, declaring that she must make sense of herself and everything around her. She walks out, slamming the door behind her. Now, the question is A Doll's House a feminist play? Actually, it is not just about female liberation, but it's about human sense in general. It's about the mutual liberation, focuses on both men and women, liberating people of both sexes in cultural and social and cultural limitation that is based on gender.
Nora, Torvald, and Dr. Rank each express the belief that a parent is obligated to be honest and upstanding, because a parent's immorality is passed on to his or her children like a disease. In fact, Dr. Rank does have a disease that is the result of his father's depravity. Dr. Rank implies that his father's immorality, his many affairs with women, led him to contract a venereal disease that he passed on to his son, causing Dr. Rank to suffer for his father's misdeeds. Torvald voices the idea that once parents determine one's moral character when he tells Nora nearly all young criminals had lying mothers. He also refuses to allow Nora to interact with their children after he learns of her deceit, for fear that she will corrupt them.
Unreliability of appearances. A dollhouse demonstrates how appearances can be deceiving. Masking of the truth plays characters and situations. Nora, Torvald, and Krogstad all have their first memories shattered. Nora appears to be childish, silly woman at first, but the play progress we see that she is intelligent, inspired, and by the play's end, a strong-willed, independent thinker. Torvald, despite portraying himself as a good, compassionate husband, reveals himself to be cowardly, petty, and selfish when he fears Krogstad will expose him to scandal. Krogstad, too, proves to be a far more sympathetic and merciful character than he seems to be at first. We see Krogstad as an earnest lover, Nora as an intelligent, courageous woman, and Torvald as a simpering, sad man. At the play's climax, situations are misunderstood by both audience and characters. Mrs. Lind and Krogstad abuse hate turns out to be love. Nora's creator turns out to be Krogstad, not Dr. Rank. As we and Mrs. Lind assumed, Dr. Rank confesses love for Nora. Much to Nora's and our surprise, Mrs. Lind ceases to support Nora and forces Torvald to discover of Nora's secret, while the apparently villainous Krogstad repents and returns Nora's contract to her. Torvald's devotion to a picture at the cost of production of true happiness results in the instability of appearances within the Helmer household, and the play's conclusion. Torvalds values his status and reputation because he seeks respect from his employee, friends, and wife. Torvald is irritated by some disrespect, such as when Nora calls him petty and Krogstad refers to him by his first name. Torvald's obsession with controlling the appearance of his home, as well as his repeated suppression and denial of truth, having irreversibly harmed his family and his happiness by the end of the play.